Attention listeners, ahead are spoilers.
Hello, and welcome to the Movie Trap. My name is Russell Carlson, and with me is my friend and co-host, Chris Boruff.
For me, God is a disease.
Jesus Christ. Oh God, this fucking movie. And with me, as always, my other friend and co-host, Zach Powers.
I was going to do the same one, so I pulled up the quotes real quick.
I think that's a first. That's a first time that we picked the same line.
Here's a quote. Maybe this is something all couples go through.
Yeah. Well, on the Movie Trap, each of the three hosts, one of the three hosts you just met, picks a theme, and then all of the three hosts then pick a movie based on that theme. After we've watched all three movies, we then vote using a certain amount of points plus some bonus points we earn along the way, and whichever movie wins the vote, that host gets to pick the next theme, which you will see today because we are in round 3 of Chris Boruff's theme of horror movies that have been recommended to you that you have not seen yet. It's been, we've been teetering around. This one's a doozy though. This one excites me because we've started with Significant Other, which was 2021, and then we did 2022's Pearl, which was the sequel to X, which was my pick, and that lands us with today Zach Powers' pick of 1981 Andrzej Zaralovsky, Possession. It's a hard movie to find. If you have a subscription to Shudder, it's very easy to find. But other than that, it's hard to find in your standard streaming places. So best of luck to you for those of you following along at home. Before we kick it off to Zach and him try to plot out this movie, I am going to do a quick rundown of the points because, as I say, we will vote at the end of this episode, followed by a brief sad but necessary announcement for those of you at home. So, with that in mind, Chris Boruff, you have 12 points for final voting with 2 bonus points to give out. I have 10 points for final voting with 2 points to give out. And Zach Powers, you have 11 points for final voting and 2 points to give out. So, that is where we are today. So, Zach, who picked this movie, so good luck.
So Possession is a 1981 film. Do you guys, I don't remember, how do you pronounce the name?
Andrzej Zaralovsky? I don't know.
Okay. We're going to go with Zalowski. Andrzej Zalowski.
Zalowski. That's it.
Yeah.
It stars Isabella Adjani and Sam Neill, a young Sam Neill, many years prior to Jurassic Park. It is the story of Mark, who is some kind of spy who returns home from West Berlin at the beginning of the film after a prolonged absence. They live in he returns home to West Berlin from East Berlin. They live in, obviously, Iron Curtain era Germany. To find his wife wants a divorce. She insists that it is necessary and takes up with the child and sort of kicks Mark out while taking custody of their son. Mark goes on a binge drinking spree for a few days and holes up in another apartment. And when he returns to the apartment where he lived with his family, he finds the child alone and just scrounging for food, neglected and untended to. Obviously, he's a bit upset by this. Anna says it wasn't like this all the time when she finally returns home and sort of attempts to make amends briefly, but Mark wants to keep an eye on Bob, the child, because, it was a bad situation. Eventually, Mark receives a call from Heinrich, who is apparently Anna's lover. Anna is now with him after she disappears. Shortly thereafter, Mark meets Bob's teacher's Helen, who is fully identical to Anna, except she has silvery slight eyes. Yeah, sort of.
She has different hair
greenish
color
or something.
Too.
Yeah,
sort of greenish, very light green. Mark eventually tracks down Heinrich, and Heinrich beats the shit out of him.
with yogi moves.
Yep. And sort of forces him to admit that he's his sexual superior. Mark returns home. He has a fight with Anna, and he hits her a little bit as well, and she runs away. They have another argument in which both of them cut themselves with a knife, a trick carving knife that you would use for a turkey. Eventually, Mark, having gone to his wit's end, hires an investigator to follow Anna, and he discovers that she has a secret apartment that is sort of run down, shitty, wallpaper peeling, all that stuff, barely decorated. He weasels his way in by saying he's doing some routine maintenance, the window cracked and someone on the street complained or something. But he discovers a strange gooey creature in the bathroom, and Anna kills him with a broken bottle. Shortly thereafter, the boyfriend of the detective contacts Mark and decides to go to the flat himself to find his now missing lover, but only finds his corpse and the creature who seems to be sort of subsuming it, kind of. And kills the boyfriend of the detective as well with a gun that he brought with him. And Anna becomes continually more erratic. She tells Mark about having a miscarriage while he was away in the subway that followed a sort of strange fit that she had, probably the most famous clip from this movie, and says that it resulted in a nervous breakdown that sort of seems to be maybe the beginning of their relationship troubles in some regards. Eventually, Heinrich also is looking for Anna. He visits Mark and is also acting extremely strangely. Mark, now having kind of put together that people who visit Anna's secret apartment don't seem to come back, sends Heinrich there, where he also discovers the strange slithering creature and several body parts in her refrigerator before she stabs him sort of in the arm chest area, and he runs away and calls Mark, tells him he is at a bar near her apartment and he needs his help. Mark, before going there, stops at the apartment where Anna is no longer there and sees the body parts, but the creature is missing. When he meets Heinrich at the bar, he sort of needles him, seemingly taking a little bit of joy in, I would say, Heinrich's pain, but eventually murders him by smashing him with a toilet lid and shoving his head into a toilet, staging it as an accident, and going back to Anna's apartment where he sets it on fire and flees. When he returns home, one of Anna's friends, Margie, who's been around, a woman in a cast who seems to kind of have a thing for Mark, has been stabbed badly. And is bleeding from various wounds. Clearly, Anna has done this as well. She dies, and he brings her body back in where Anna is, and the two have sex and agree to get rid of the body and cover up the murder. Later that night, though, Anna is found having sex with the strange creature and seemingly enjoying it a great deal. Heinrich's mother also calls Mark looking for him, and when he goes to meet her, she kills herself by overdosing on sleeping pills. The next day, Mark wanders the street and is approached by several of his business partners to return to his previous work, but he attempts not to. Things become incredibly fast-paced at this point and almost seemingly happen without rhyme or reason. He returns to Margie's apartment. It's surrounded by police as well as some of the people he used to work with. He causes a major distraction as somebody, presumably Anna, flees from the apartment in a car, but he is wounded and heads to another building where Anna meets up with him. The police and other people are outside gathered around. This is now a big incident. There is an explosion. Mark has been stabbed. He had a motorbike accident, and up in the top of the building with the police down below, Anna reveals that the creature has now reformed as Mark's exact doppelganger. Mark is about to shoot it, but the police fire up at them before they can. Both of them are hit. Anna grabs the gun that he was going to use to shoot the creature and shoots herself in the back in a very bizarre way, killing herself. And Mark jumps to his death down off the balcony. The creature enlists the aid of a woman nearby who he seems to almost mesmerize, and flees through the roof, telling the woman to take the gun and shoot down at the police. Shortly thereafter, we see the teacher, Helen, who looks just like Anna, is babysitting little Bob, whom she has gotten closer with. She's performed motherly duties with Bob several times throughout the movie. When the doorbell rings and Bob starts yelling at her not to open the door, The silhouette of the Mark creature can be seen through the glass. Bob runs upstairs and gets inside the tub, possibly drowning himself. And we see the silhouette of the Mark doppelganger as Helen stares into the camera with gleaming eyes. And that...
air raid sirens in the background.
And sirens begin to run in the background. That's possession.
It's remarkable you were able to do that as a narrative. Like, so much stuff happens in this that is so wacky that it is hard to always attach. Like, this is happening because of this.
Yeah, a lot of it is very, especially the further it goes on, the more it is just sort of a fever dream where people are behaving in incredibly bizarre and irrational ways. Yeah.
Well, the whole movie kind of starts out in like this very fevered pace. Especially the range of emotions that it pretty much starts with. You start pretty much everybody already at a 9.
And there's scenes even early.
Slow down from there.
There's scenes even early on where they're like discussing their divorce and being very emotional, and then a group of children will run by, and Mark seems delighted by them just seconds after this sort of heavy conversation about his divorce. So it seems like emotions like shift and turn very erratically.
Right.
I've heard this is like based off the director went through a really bad breakup or like a divorce, and I guess that would make sense because it's probably his emotions as he went through it. I don't know. This is it's interesting when you see someone who can actually like put together the emotion that they felt and how it was up and down and felt strange and actually communicate that to an audience.
Sure, and credit to the performances too. I mean, I thought both Sam Neill and I can't pronounce her name, but I thought they were really
Isabella
good.
Johnny.
Yeah, really, really, really good. I found that the funniest part for me in this movie is that it's fit so many of previous movie trap themes. We have the doppelganger thing, right? We've got the actor playing 2 different roles twice. We've got what I would argue 2 different movies that shift genres in the middle of the movie. I mean, I can keep going. I mean, it's just. I'm gonna
give you a point. That makes sense.
Yay!
That's funny. Yeah.
And it's worth noting, Isabella Johnny was in the American remake of Les Diaboliques, which we watched for this show, along with Sharon Stone and Chaz Palminteri.
She's really well known in Truffaut's Agnes H, I think. You know, I looked through her filmography. Yeah. She's worked with a lot of pretty legendary, arty European directors. Herzog, Truffaut, this guy. Which I didn't know. Apparently, this film's been like a secret handshake among like film buffs for a while.
I guess. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, sure. But also, I mean, I think a lot of it is the legend that it was when it came to the United States finally, they had cut so much out of it that an already pretty difficult to understand movie probably became incomprehensible. So I think that's probably why it just died on the vine as soon as it came out west.
Yeah, I looked it up, and Isabella Johnny won the Cannes for Best Actress for this one.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably kind of the introduction most people had to this movie, is just because it won that award. But I could see how they would probably cut this one down pretty hard. It is hard to overstate how uncomfortable it is to watch the movie itself, like the tension level and everything, like how the cameras are set.
Very true.
How the people are acting, like everything about Sam Neill. Like Sam Neill is funny because usually he's a little hammy in things. But in this one, it's like clearly being used correctly. It's almost, it feels almost like a expressionist type performance because it's so extreme. Like there's that scene where he is like rocking back and forth in the chair, and it looks almost like it should be comedy, but he looks so manic and serious doing it that it's obviously more disturbing than funny. I don't know what to make of this movie.
I'm with you, brother. I really am. Like it's sort of one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast is because like I get to watch movies like this that I would have no other reason to watch. I don't know if I liked it or not. I really don't. But I'm kind of glad I watched it just to kind of like this is what I call hard mode movie. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a hard mode movie. This is not a movie that like you just recommend casually to friends, right? This is a movie that takes some buckling up.
It feels more like a somewhat academic exercise. You know you're going to be watching something serious, not something that's popcorn.
Jimmy, who you work with down at the store, if he's like, I got nothing to watch tonight.
Right.
How about why you got either Top Gun Maverick or Possession?
I was thinking about checking out Rosario Dawson in that Ahsoka show, but sure, I mean, this Isabella Adjani lady, she looks pretty. I'm sure this is a really fun movie.
Yeah, I was gonna watch. I hear Sam Neill's in that latest Jurassic Park movie. Should I watch that, or you should watch what he's been in before Jurassic Park, if you really want to get the full context of that guy's career. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. The movie certainly demands heightened viewing. That like, because even like the socio-political aspects, it's really cool that her apartment where all the madness happens is like right at the goddamn wall.
Yeah, and obviously
like right at the wall.
Yeah, like Possession is almost an interesting title because so much of this movie is about separation. But I mean, I understand the possession angle too, in that I think it's, the idea that even if you have this divorce from somebody who you spend a significant part of your life with, there is an aspect of yourself that does belong to that person and vice versa. But yeah, even the setting,
especially since they have a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the setting, if obviously the wall is a metaphor for that, separation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This seems like it's a better use of the wall than other films that I've seen. Like, I think we watched
without it actually being about the wall. Like Spy Who Came In From the Cold, right? I mean that movie is about moving people in between the wall.
Or like even like Wings of Desire or like Suspiria, the remake. Like, I really liked both of them, but this one I think like more keenly. It was like a disturbing split in reality, politically, and also because this guy's marriage was eating itself. It seems kind of crazy.
Yep. I definitely think that this movie feels... I mean, I know it's definitely a cult classic. There's a lot of people who... we all watched it recently, and it might take some time to sort through our feelings on it, which is one of the tricky things about this podcast when you talk about movies like this that are a little... out there and have a lot going on, and sometimes you have to take a minute before you think about it, like a few weeks later, and or like come to some grand decision. But obviously, this is a cult classic for a lot of people. There's a lot of folks who rate this like a 5-star movie. I think it has a lot of influence on a lot of sort of these horror directors who make these surreal things. Like, I could easily see a Lynch or a Cronenberg having watched this and taken a lot from it.
It feels like it's almost like abstract horror. It like that seems like it's a pretty keen thing, that like definitely like a David Lynch sort of that odd surrealist horror, because it almost felt to me like the movie was so heightened and so strange that I had trouble with like understanding the emotions of the story itself. Like at one point it just turned into a character study and like a study in like the mania from going through a breakup, rather than like an actual storyline about a monster eating people.
Yeah,
it felt weird because it's a horror movie and there's a monster.
Is it?
But the monster itself.
Yeah, I guess monster. Okay, horror movie.
And there's a series of murders.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean,
even in the context of like being a monster movie, it feels like most of the horror, like when the monster shows up, it's gross and it's extreme. But a lot of the ways that they're acting towards each other in this marriage and sort of making the audience potentially go through past traumas of their own watching this movie.
For sure.
That like by the time the monster gets there, it almost felt anticlimactic to me. It was like, oh, so this is the reason that she's gone crazy. I didn't really need an explanation at this point. It could have just gone to the extreme and never settled into a storyline.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously with what the monster ultimately ends up being, and like there's certain lines about he talks about how he feels that when she's with Heinrich, she wishes she was at home, and when she's at home, she wishes she was with Heinrich. And I think that, the monster being this, obviously, I think both of them have like this doppelganger of themselves that they're interested in that represents the version of that person they wish that person was and is not. The monster obviously ties into the main theme of divorce and separation and what you want out of somebody who is, not entirely at least yours to possess, but the version of them you want them to be and that you maybe can have, at least in your own mind or in your memory.
Yeah.
All right. I'll give you a point. I think that's a good point about the monster, that it represented sort of the wife, or at least the doppelganger crossover, the fact that both of them were trying to do that. This movie is a lot better with that particular metaphor than the breakup with Jennifer Aniston and I can't even remember the other guy's name now. There's a thing at the end of that where they wound up Vince Vaughn, because at the end of that there's like they show up and they're like, oh, funny to see you, and then it's like they have significant others that look exactly like the
speaking of, like there's some overlap there with Significant Other, which we also watched for this.
Right, yeah. And not for nothing, Pearl, too. There's a little bit of...
It's almost like that thing you said with...
There's like a weird... There is a weird consistency between these
horror films being about relationship problems seems to be something that is kind of a universal over time.
That's right. And that's why, because like immediately when I started watching it and thinking it's a horror movie, and then where it endly ends up, the Cronenberg Lynch comparisons I think are undeniable. But at the beginning, it's almost like, what if Cronenberg or David Lynch like tried to direct a John Cassavetes script because of the way the very heightened emotion of the troubled relationship and the way they just like are just monstrous to one another. It kind of gave me flashbacks to that. It's I want to credit the cameraman on this one too, because it's a lot of Steadicam, and in 1981, like the technology was, it's a lot more lightweight now, but it was still pretty cool to see that in such a fluid action.
Yeah, it can't be overstated how hard the focus pulling had to be in that subway sequence.
Right, and even in the first shot when he's getting debriefed by number 2 or whatever. Where it's that long warning across, and he says, I've resigned, and he says, why did you resign? I'm kidding, it doesn't go like that, but you get my drift.
It does feel like The Prisoner for a second there, though. Like, they never come back to the fact that he was a spy in any meaningful way. It's just here's all this spy shit. Okay, have fun with the rest of the movie. It's like, okay.
That's right. Yeah, right. Yeah, and hey, but we're in West Berlin, too, so, spy shit. So, yeah, that's what it kind of struck with me about, like, the sort of almost... the melodramatic telling of a dissolution of a marriage, and then to kind of change it to this kind of strange, I don't know, kind of alien shit coming out, is very very similar to Significant. But I also thought of, as soon as like the doppelganger showed up at the end, I thought of like, oh, isn't this what that one like Jake Gyllenhaal, Denis Villeneuve movie we tried to watch kind of trying to do as well? That Enemy movie? And
Enemy.
I thought that this movie probably did that a lot more successfully, albeit probably just as ambiguous as that Enemy
I'm gonna say not probably. This movie did it successfully. And Enemy did not do that. Enemy, it was like everything about the monster was just encapsulated by that giant spider that appeared for no goddamn reason at the end of the movie.
Right. That's right. So yeah, that's why I it's one of those movies where I'm not sure if I liked it, but I'm glad I watched it, because I don't think I've seen a movie like that before. I have not seen a movie like that. Seen movies get kind of close, because even like, because it even reminded me a little bit of like, what if the creature is just Mark's manifestation of his own jealousy and insecurity, doesn't actually exist, and he's the one killing all these people or whatever. Like it's those kind of movies and these kind of stories and the way they're told, where it is sort of like demand so much from you, the audience, to pour so much of your attention and analytical chutzpah into digesting this movie. In a way, I sort of hate movies like that because it's pretty pretentious, and I'm just like, come on, guys. But I will say this movie was interesting from beginning to end. It never really bored me. It definitely disturbed my wife and the dog I was babysitting during the subway scene because they were like, what on earth is happening? Because Zach kind of brushed over with the subway scene because he's right, and we should probably spend a little bit of time on it because it is probably the most famous sequence in the, well, it probably is the most famous sequence because, like I said, I've never heard of this film before we watched it. So she gets off a subway, and this is after we kind of get through this weird videotape that he watched, this film that he watches of her in like a ballet class, and it's kind of got like a Black Swan vibe where she's like really, really intense, and then kind of given like a
she's like abusive to her students.
Yeah.
And she addresses camera directly. Was that a videotape? That whole section kind of got a little...
So it was him watching a film strip and then of her teaching, and then eventually she sort of directly addresses the camera and is directly addressing Mark, but obviously with things that are referencing the time and place that he's watching it, and probably not the time and place it was filmed.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it cuts to her getting off a subway and walking down, and she's carrying a bag of groceries. And it's a roller coaster of emotion because it starts with her kind of giggling to herself, and then it's a gyration. The whole thing lasts about, like, I don't know, almost 2 minutes, 30 seconds. It's pretty long. And it just furiously throwing herself all around, throwing stuff around, gyrating. It's making these howling, inhuman noises that give you this kind of like Rosemary's Baby, but without being, gross, like, because it's from Polanski. But we'll get to Polanski later, because apparently, anyway, because she's worked with Polanski.
Crossover?
Too. She worked with Polanski back in the
that
day,
happens.
Before Rosemary's Baby. So it's kind of funny that the idea of demonic possession, which is what this film the title kind of makes you think that that's what's going to happen, because you see the creature like, well, is that Satan or whatever? And then that scene happens, and you're almost like, this is the Exorcist moment. This is the moment where she becomes possessed, and you're sort of that, and then it kind of cuts back to him watching stuff. It's a strange thing to watch because you kept waiting for it to end and something to happen, and then when she finally does just sit there in a pool of milk and blood, at least I think it's milk. There's a hard cut in the middle. Like everything before then is like I think basically an uncut shot. Yeah. And then it hard cuts and she's just screaming, doing like a feral animal yell. And most of the movie's really uncomfortable, but that scene makes you actually like want to get up out of your chair and move away from the screen a little bit. It's a little over it feels like the social contract between you and the filmmaker might have gotten a little thin there. It's very strange. It's also been covered a couple Zach
times,
said, Lynch,
which is very much like Lynch. Like this one, the scene. I sent you guys this like video link. Massive Attack and Young Fathers did a song called "Voodoo in My Blood." It was directed by somebody or other. Anyway, Rosamund Pike is in it, so it's kind of a famous person. But they basically do a reenactment of the whole like walk-up thing, except without the screaming and the milk. There's far less liquids involved.
Sure.
So yeah, like it, and it's that's an intense, and I think I read somewhere that director said we did it 2 takes, and I felt terrible doing 2 takes. But you need one because you're shooting on film, and if something goes wrong with the lab, then you don't have it. But he said like we used the first one and just did a second one for safety, and that's it because you can't. And even I like that Sam Neill and the actor and her both said that this is something I will never ever do again. I'll never do a movie like this again.
It looked dangerous and painful. Like it's one of those things. Like when in that sequence, it's like I imagine like. Like for me, it made me nervous because I was just like, she's gonna slam her head into a wall without realizing
I thought the same thing. Yeah, the way she was like really going for it, and like those were. Like I was looking at the walls and it's like, those are just stone ass walls. Like there is nothing artificial about this. This is a stone ass subway wall, and she is flinging herself violently. I was nervous she was gonna like slam her head into the wall as well.
It's like some pretty intense, like brutalist architecture in the room to be like jumping around on it like a jungle gym. Yeah. I don't know. I've never seen a movie make me that that sequence
uncomfortable,
is like, it's
for
uncomfortable,
sure.
but it's used a lot. Like that one particularly is shown a lot, and I always think it's kind of interesting that it's such an indelible image of just her swinging the eggs specifically. When the first swing where she slams the eggs and they explode, for some reason that particular image gets like freeze framed a lot and shared.
Yeah, it's an arresting moment because you're like, what the fuck is going on? And you know,
don't really
but luckily
understand what the context is until she clarifies afterwards, like the miscarriage thing. But before, you don't really know what the fuck is going on. And then afterwards, they cut to her talking to Sam about the incident to Mark, I guess, the character's name. And that's when she sort of reveals it's a miscarriage, again in a very cryptic way, where she says, like, she miscarried Sister Faith,
yeah.
and left Sister Chance alive, or something of that nature.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't even, I'm a little dumb, so I just didn't pick up on it. Like, so much of this was like kind of odd dialogue that I couldn't always tell, like, is this an actual thing they're saying or is this symbolic of something? So that was one of those moments that I think I was a little lost.
I felt that way throughout that whole segment, that whole point of her watching it, because it's kind of that whole segment where she's looking, like you said, directly to camera, because she even does it when Mark's right there. She's looking like directly to camera, telling us this story or whatever. And yeah, it's almost like it feels like I don't get this, but I don't think I'm supposed to get it. Again, typically that annoys the piss out of me, but it didn't quite annoy me this time. It more accomplished what I think it was trying to accomplish, which is confusion and dread, really. Because like now it made her that much more terrifying. They do a good job of really transforming her into like a pretty menacing figure. You know, even though Mark is very much like terrible to her and like does not take this breakup very well at all, you know, to the point where it starts getting violent between the two. Because that's where, to me, that's where everything in the movie changes. Once they finally, when she hits him and then he hits her back, and it's like there's this moment where it cuts, because everything's moving a lot, and that's the one moment where it like cuts right to Sam Neill's eyes or whatever. And that's where I felt like everything kind of changed. And this is where a part of me thinks that like a lot of this is Mark sort of his own guilt and self-hatred sort of manifesting into this doppelganger sort of thing. Maybe it is just as a way to what he, or as we pointed out, this director kind of wrote this as more of a therapy piece for his own divorce, that he just wanted to see his ex-wife get banged by a monster. You know, and that just made him feel better and get through the breakup easier.
I guess.
Who am I to say?
Does this movie have a main character? I guess Mark, kind of, maybe?
I would have to say Mark. Nope, Bob.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
Well, just because it's one of those things, like, there's such a strange thing going on. Like, I guess I'd assume Mark, just because it's the director, probably as an insert character, but...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure one could probably make a case for Anna being the main character, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it really is pretty much a two-hander. It's one of the two of them, because they steal most of the screen time. Like, the third most prominent character, I mean... obviously is either the teacher, who's also played by the same actress, or weird-ass Heinrich.
Yeah, right. That's why, here's another theory I kind of wanted to pose to you guys, considering the whole spy thing. What if they made, the idea was to make Mark go crazy, to come back to the Force, or either to make everything he did within the circus, I'm going to call it the circus, like null and void. So what if the East Germans are the ones who kind of set up this honey trap with Marx, with the wife and Heinrich or whatever, and this is sort of a way to kind of get at him from a sideways point of view, and that's why the guy in the pink socks at the end kind of pulls up, because he's a part of the whole like police raid in there, and kind of is part of assassinating both of them. It's a thought. I don't know.
I mean, it is interesting because the pink sock guy, like, they stop and show this guy's pink socks, and it's a very interesting, like, very purposefully, and it's like, why are we seeing this guy's pink ass socks?
It's because of the debrief. He was talking about following a guy with pink socks.
Oh, right, okay. I must have. Yep. I mean, maybe the the amount of crazy shit that happened between those two times.
Absolutely.
Those 2
Absolutely. Hey, look, you know what? And that's why, in a way you do kind of have to admire a movie like this, that there's many ways to connect the dots if you want to. If you want to.
Sure, I'll give you a point, Russell, for your various possible conspiracy interpretations.
Years of reading Jean Le Carré have finally paid off.
I don't particularly buy that this is a secret spy narrative, but
I mean, it's funny because this movie has caused a lot of like YouTube explainers. Like I just did a little Google search earlier. I was like, all right, let's see. Like all of the movies we do have like a couple explainers out there. This one, there's like just a plethora of like film school students, like just like possessions about this. It's the problems of separation. It's about a divorce. It's a movie about yada yada. And it was just very funny that like there's so many different interpretations of this where it's clearly about a divorce, and the guy's clearly going through some stuff, but it's interesting that people could bring a lot to it because there's so much happening in the movie that you could jump from.
And that's why I lean into my movie. This is a hard mode movie. Again, this is one of those movies that you would write a thesis statement on for your master's in film. And this would be your like case study of whatever, because there's a lot to pour into. It's like Apocalypse Now or 2001. Those kind of, I'm not saying it's that good, but I'm saying it's that level of demand out of you from an audience member.
Sure.
Granted, in 2001 and Apocalypse Now, I will say about this movie, it's not that long, but it's a lot longer than I thought. I remember like the gyration scene happens like kind of, there's still a lot of movie to get through once that happens.
Yeah, it's like midpoint.
Yeah.
It's a
longer
very
than
film school movie. It feels very film school to me.
Yeah, it's I think just a little bit north of 2 hours, which, I feel like, I mean, nowadays is maybe even not that long. It's almost,
For sure.
movies are just always long now. But yeah.
Oh, everything's streaming. Everything's online. You can pause it whenever.
Yeah.
I think
that's
how did just like Nolan wanted. I'm kidding.
How did so you picked this one out, Zach? What do you think of this movie that was recommended to you? That is, I would say, a brisk walk in the park. It's intense.
I don't know. Is this? I mean, that sounds a little like hedging into Final Thoughts territory. Is that where we're?
Well, I guess
heading?
because we do have to vote and stuff. I mean, I've kind of run out of stuff to say. If I'm gonna keep going. I would just keep going just about how how I appreciate technically this was made, like with the Steadicam and stuff. Very, very, very competently made, and it made me interested to watch more things by this guy, because apparently he had to get kicked out of Poland because he didn't get along with the Communist Party there, because he made a whole other movie that had to do with like humans crashing on a planet, getting stranded there.
Is that The Devil?
No, it's one that he did after that. I think it's called like The Rising Globe or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, there's
The Silver Globe.
That's it. That apparently got like muddled with by the Polish authorities and stuff. So I think it's interesting that this film is this is his first English language spoken film, and he kept making films until he died, until 2016. Again, I had never heard of this guy. Never even heard of this guy, but now I could definitely see the Cronenberg, the Lynch influence, even a little bit of, we are pretty much Cronenberg. I mean, Cronenberg to me is the loud one on this one, like, because I could definitely see, like, Cronenberg remaking this and probably doing okay with it.
There's a lot of body horror.
Yeah. It's a body horror John Cassavetes film. So in that respect, I found it interesting. Will I ever watch it again? Probably not. Probably not. But other than that, there are some production things that I thought were interesting that, like, Sam Neill pretty much got in because originally the actress was supposed to be Judy Davis, because he liked them in some Australian film that they saw together, but Judy Davis wasn't available, but Sam Neill still was. And yeah, she was nominated for an Oscar for the Truffaut film. I'm never gonna get her name right because it's just a blank to me.
Isabella Adjani.
Johnny, yeah, right. Anyway, she was nominated for an Oscar for that Truffaut.
Think of our friend Johnny and put. There's one Johnny. It's a Johnny.
Isabella Johnny. but I will say, I mean, I've never seen anything that she's done, but this was really hard on her. I got to imagine. I mean, I cannot imagine just not even the famous scene, like the whole movie. She is dialing it up to 11.
Yeah, they definitely asked these actors to go for it.
Right. I mean, that's hard to do for a movie, and it's like that the whole way. There is barely any moment where they're not like that.
Yeah, I mean, even the supporting cast has to do such bizarre, like that scene where Heinrich comes to his apartment and for no discernible reason he's just twirling the entire time during the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Heinrich character is sort of like a breath of fresh air.
Maybe he's on drugs because he's a druggie.
Definitely on drugs.
Well, that would be the question. Like they say in one of the things I saw that he was supposed to be a drug dealer, but somehow I also didn't pick up on him being a drug dealer. I just saw him show up, and I'm like, there's this weird 70s pimp that is just wandering through.
He brings some kind of drug for them to have sex.
Yeah, he keeps like wagging like a thing in front of her, like a baggie and stuff, which I assume is
ketamine. He says it's the drug that the poet Marceau, the French poet Marceau, talks about. I looked it up at the time. I think it's ketamine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the most the easiest one who doesn't take it to 11 is Heimlich's mom, right? Because she just pretty much says, "I don't want to live without him. Goodbye." And that's it. Yeah. It's the most understated anything that happens in the whole movie. She just like lays in bed and says goodbye. That's it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we could probably get to final thoughts because we do have to vote.
Yeah, I think this one also briefly wasn't someone from the movie Alien involved in this production. Like I think
the creation of the creator.
The monster.
Yep.
Yeah, the monster was he. The guy who made the monster also went on to work on Alien. So yeah, a lot of goopy. Slurpee.
All right, so I guess I could talk about my final thoughts. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, interesting movie, probably one of the most interesting movies we've watched on this podcast. It's a movie that can't help but stick with you. But as I mentioned earlier, recommend with caution. Because like this is a movie where you gotta have to. It's like a Bergman film, you know. Like you have to put on your big boy pants to kind of watch it, you know. Like it's you know, like you have to take it seriously, but you also have to kind of put yourself in a kind of analytical distance and allow the director to just full on just mess with you the whole way. And it might even be a pie in the face by the end of it. You just kind of have to live with it. It's one of those movies, so recommend with caution. If you're really interested in Sam Neill's early career, this is definitely should be up there for you because he really is really good in it and has to do a lot. His like Boruff said, there's a scene when he's talking to Heimlich, trying to convince him to go to the monster or whatever, knowing, I'm assuming full well, what's going to happen to Heimlich.
Yeah, he seems to be taking glee in taunting him.
Yeah, there's this menacing look that I haven't seen since Boruff's favorite film with Sam Neill, The Mouth of Madness. A John Carpenter film, your favorite.
Yeah.
The another great one, or was that another one in outer space of Sam Neill that you love so much? Oh god damn it!
Oh god, no! The Event Horizon.
I'll think of it here in a second. That's it. Yeah, your favorite movie. You love that movie. So yeah, I would. But if you are willing to take the dive, and watch pretty traumatic relationship arguments and fights that sort of make it sort of makes Kramer versus Kramer look like a kid's movie. You know, like this the not just like the body horror stuff. I'm talking like the actual like genuine rage and terror that these two invoke out of one another before we even know there's bloodshed to be had is jarring, but interesting to watch on film. And you know, was it worth it? Probably not, but I'm glad I did it. Yeah.
I guess I'll give my final thoughts and then I'll let Zach close it out since this was his pick. I I appreciate that I was able to finally see this one because it has been on my supposed to watch it list for almost 20 years, ever since I think film school. Everybody talks about 9/11. Ever since 9/11, yeah. It's a strange movie. I think I got exactly kind of what I expected it was going to be, which was just very intense and a little bit uncomfortable nonstop.
Could have warned me.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of indelible. Like, I'm surprised that... I'm actually surprised this one wasn't forced on me by a film school teacher. Somehow I watched Crash 5 times, and it took me 20 years to see this once. I don't understand why this happens to people. If we just take a moment outside of what I'm saying here for the people at home, we got to reform the education system. That's what I'm saying. That's what this movie makes me say to you, the audience. So
Otherwise,
Possession
he's
looks
gonna
great.
go up to the bathtub and drown himself, guys. He's serious. Let's change education.
Yeah, I mean, so this movie doesn't flinch, and I appreciate that, because much like Carlson said, it is, I would say, kind of pretentious at times, but there's something about it that is so grounded in actual loss and sadness that it seems like it sort of transcends the sort of more kabuki level of acting that's going on, to actually remind people a little bit, at least remind me more of like previous potentially toxic relationships during college or other times in life when I was young, and these decisions seemed like they'd be world-shattering. And I'm now older, so it's not quite... It's remembering back to try to remember something that was this tense and uncomfortable. This movie is definitely something that gave me that reference point of like, oh yes, I remember how horrifically uncomfortable it was to go through a breakup in my 20s for the first time, or go through various breakups over time. It's interesting to me that this movie was something that they were able to encapsulate that sense and the level of sort of bizarreness that comes afterwards, where you're sort of getting over the things that have happened. So sometimes you'll feel happy, sometimes you'll feel sad, and they'll often happen right back next to each other. So a lot of the times that this movie changes its moods and changes its tone, it worked for me because I found it more acceptable as a state of mania that would be referential of the actual theme of the movie. So anyway, I would say it's probably a watch, but not with friends. This is definitely a starchy watch. I would probably get a strong cup of coffee, watch it some evening, and yeah, it's good. It's good.
It's good. It is a good movie. I just don't know if I like it. But I will, before I give up, Zach, I want to give you a point for choosing this movie. Because, again, this is why I do this. This is why I love doing this show, is doing movies like this. Movies that I've never heard of, but apparently have this really esoteric lore and is quite an experience to watch. So I'm giving you a point for that.
Okay. Yeah, so I largely agree. Yeah, obviously this is we talked about like stuff like Lynch and like the Lynchian sort of influence this had on him and stuff. And the thing about that is like, so with Lynch, for instance, I have this thing where sometimes it really works for me and sometimes it just doesn't land. Like, for instance, like with Twin Peaks: The Return, a lot of people love that. For me, it's too much. Like you can't stretch this out for 17 hours, my man, and fill 10 of them with a guy sweeping a floor. Like, eventually there's a limit.
I wish I could give you another point for that.
You're out of points.
But when it works, and I think this is an example of it working because I think the internal logic of the movie obviously is bananas. It's off the wall. It's nowhere. But the emotional consistency, like it lives in this place of emotion. I guess Chris and you both kind of said that. I wish I could split a point between you. I don't think I can, unfortunately.
We went over this, Zach.
We have no fractions.
But yeah, like it, like the emotional resonance, the emotional place of this movie always feels genuine. It's genuine, like in the performance and the way he directs it, the way it was written. Like he made something that feels honest the whole time, even when it's loopy and crazy and out of its mind. Like, it is true to what it is. Like, it's a piece of art in that regard, I guess you could say. I think I like it worked. Like, it works for me. I think I liked this movie, and I don't know, maybe in a few weeks, when I think about it, I'll like it more. Maybe I'll decide it's like a real classic. I don't know. Maybe it's still gestating in me. Maybe it'll miscarry.
Oh, jeez.
Right now I am pro this movie. It is a weird one. It's not for everybody. It's strange. It's bizarre. It's unsettling often. You know, it's gonna do things you don't expect. Zig when you expect it to zag, I guess. You've listened to a whole podcast about it if you haven't seen it already, so maybe you know at least some of the shit that's gonna go down. This is a unique movie. I'll say that, and I think I like this movie. I'm certainly glad it exists, no matter how I feel in a few months.
That is fair enough, and you know, it's like I said, you know, it's sort of like I just finished rereading Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy because he died and shit. You know, when you read like literature that's meant to have sort of like kind of open-ended interpretation, there's many ways to look at a gemstone. That's kind of how I felt about this movie. That whatever you want to pour into this movie's almost ready for you to do that. If you're willing to meet it there, you know, like that's sort of what I appreciate.
And not everybody will. A lot of people would watch this movie and be like, "This is some stupid bullshit." Horse.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife will not like it. I can tell you that right now. Okay, well that kind of wraps up Boruff's theme of horror movies, because we just can't get enough of the horror movies for Chris Boruff's taste. So that wraps us up. So, gentlemen, here are our points as we stand now. Chris Boruff, you have 12 points for final voting. I have 12 points for final voting. And Zach, you have 13 points for final voting.
Okay.
So, with that in mind, Chris Boruff, for Significant Other, what's your pointage?
I gave it a 2, and you can't see the artwork because I've got a light going.
Oh, no, you can see it okay. You just got to forget there's a... Okay, yeah. Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
alien.
You know.
Nice job, buddy.
Space alien. There you go. Yeah, there you go.
That's well done. Nice job. Mine's a hump of crap compared to yours, but I gave it relatively the same score. I gave Significant Other a 1.
I gave Significant Other a 2. I will say it's not a terrible movie. It's not as good as the others, but honestly, like, this round went longer than usual. I forgot several times what the other movie in the round was, and I was like, what else did we watch for this?
Yeah. Whereas, like,
I literally had to look up.
I did too.
I had to look up our podcast feed and see which movie we watched.
I had the exact same thing. Tabla Rasa. The movie could have been called that, and I would have believed it, because no memory. No memory of that movie.
And yeah, it's probably out of the 3 movies, the one that probably had the least anything to really remember. Anyway, it's a fine movie, but yeah, not forgettable, clearly. All right, Chris Boruff, sequel to X, Pearl, what do you got?
Okay, for Pearl, I gave it a 4. And it's a rainbow and Pearl and her alligator, and the rainbow's red, because there's a lot of blood in the movie. There you go.
I gave Pearl... What was that number? I missed the number. What was the actual number?
4. Sorry.
4. Okay. I gave Pearl a 6. Out of the 3, I've probably found Pearl the most enjoyable to watch, because it was something I didn't expect it to be, considering X, and I really enjoyed Mia Goth.
That is fair.
I love those kind of stories. So yeah.
It is the one I'm probably the most likely to rewatch at a given time. That's my turn for Pearl. I gave it a 5. Pearl's a fine, fun film for the whole family, except that last part.
Yeah. And when you don't want to have a fine family film for your family, Chris Boruff, what did you give Possession?
Okay, so I gave it a 6.
Okay.
and I started drawing a rose because I was so uncomfortable thinking about the movie, and then the rose still came out as really uncomfortable. So I think that says something about the movie, that I couldn't even draw a pretty flower after watching it. I gave it a 6 because I can't deny that it is a very high quality, well-made movie. I do love Pearl, though.
I gave it a 5. I can't take away the quality of that movie and the experience, and clearly the way it's wormed its way into my brain. I can't deny that, but I'm going to go with what Zach said earlier. If I had to choose which of these 3 movies I would recommend to somebody else, I'm going to go with Pearl, because that one I could pretty much hit a wall and somebody will probably like it. Whereas Possession, that's a strategic, strike. You can't just shotgun that out,
I'm not doing a recommendation basis. I give Possession a 6. I think this is the one that I will remember the most vividly of the 3. And I think it has, of the 3, the most potential to move up and down in my estimation as a film. So I'm giving it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt on there. I was thinking about doing an even split between Pearl and Possession, but I think I just had to give Possession a little edge.
I'm in the same
I was
boat.
with you. I decided which one I was going to give the edge for, because the way the math worked with 12. But no shame here to losing to Possession, because I thought that was certainly something. Okay, Zach Powers, that brings you up to the booth. So what theme are we jumping in?
I want to watch a very stupid movie that I haven't seen since I was very young. And so I reverse engineered a theme for it.
Okay,
That
fair
theme
enough.
is-
No. Fair enough.
Non-musical movies that have a musical moment or musical have a song in them. So movies that are not musicals, but there is a musical performance of some kind. Yes.
Can they be about musicals?
Sure, as long as they are not themselves a musical.
Okay.
There's not a series of original songs written for it. Maybe there's a diegetic song, or maybe the character. You guys kind of get the idea.
Okay.
You're not going to submit The Little Mermaid or Little Shop of Horrors or whatever other
It's
things
like-
that start with little.
It's like The Wicker Man could be argued to kind of
It
fit
could.
into that.
Wicker Man would fit, in my opinion.
Because
Okay.
it's a musical to me emotionally, but it's also not considered a musical to anybody else.
Correct. Yes, that's the idea. So this is a movie that I saw on TV a lot as a kid, and it has some of the most, speaking of over the top performances, it's a vanity project. Haven't seen it in ages. I've been thinking about it recently, and I thought it would be funny to discuss on the show. That movie's Hudson Hawk.
Oh, wow.
God.
Okay. Jeez.
Whew.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
You know what? I don't think I've actually seen this movie. I think
I haven't seen it in 20 years, if not more.
tangentially.
I don't think I've seen it in 20,
people.
25 years.
I don't think I've ever
um,
actually seen the whole thing. I remembered hearing about how badly it bombed, and the fact that people said that it was going to end
I
Hudson
still
Hawk's
remember
career.
Richard E. Grant and Sandra Bernhard as the villains, going just 11 out of 10 in this movie. I still have memories of that. I don't know what we might despise the fuck out of this movie, but I think it's going to be funny to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm all
I think
for
it's
it.
got Danny Aiello's in it, I think.
He is, for sure.
Okay.
Nice.
Well, he's always a gem, so hopefully this will be a good one, even if it's just for him.
Yeah.
That is so sweet. Alrighty. That is what we will be doing next time. We'll be starting the theme of musicals that are not musicals, or at least musical scenes in movies that are not themselves a musical. But before we let you go with the next theme, but do tune in next time for Hudson Hawk. However, it will be a couple of months before we get there. Life has been busy for pretty much all 3 of us. When you start a show during the pandemic and then pandemic life goes away, you run out of time pretty quickly. So as you've already noticed with our feeds, it's been pretty sporadic as far as time being able to get episodes out. So we're trying to give the decent boss man, Chris Boruff, our sweet, benevolent overlord, some time to get work and the craziness of life sorted out.
Right.
So
we don't have any hard date for the next episode. I'd say if you're subscribed, stay subscribed, and it'll just pop into your feed. Maybe it'll be a month, maybe it'll be 2. Who knows?
Yeah, it's going to come. We will talk about Hudson Hawk. I just need to get through some of the real world stuff that's happened outside the context of this. Not going to go into too much detail, but I have to jump on a plane. I have to do all this other stuff. I was up on top of a ladder drilling into a ceiling. All sorts of stuff is going on. I'm not moving. It's just the world's moving on, and I got to keep up with it a little bit. But that said, I am looking forward to when we come back.
Yeah. So that's what we say. We're only doing this for fun. So don't give up on us. We won't give up on you. We promise. So with that in mind, fellas, this has been a joy. I gotta say, I love doing movies like this with you guys because it's a lot of fun. And I'm excited to do Hudson Hawk. Actually, I'm really I haven't been this excited to do a movie since Police Academy.
I thought this would be. I think I'm throwing this next round, but I think it'll be a fun discussion.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and stick with us. Also, keep commenting on us. Twitter with us. We'll respond back.
Or follow us on Threads.
Us in that respect.
I think we might be on Threads. Maybe not. I don't know how Threads works yet, but we might be on.
I don't know either. Yeah, who knows? The whole social media landscape's a shit show. But we're always on YouTube, and you can always find us there. With that being said, I have been Russell Carlson, and I have been joined by Chris Boruff.
I don't have a quote from the movie because I literally only remembered the one line. I just remember something about feel better with your masculinity. I think Heinrich said that or something as he sashayed, gavodded through the room.
That's right. And I've also been joined by Zach Powers.
When I was a boy, the dog crawled under the porch to die.
That whole thing, too. And then he sees a dog floating in the river at the end. Man, This movie does a lot to you. Crazy movie.
Such an uplifting movie.
Oh, yeah. Full of hopes and dreams. With a kid possibly drowning in a bathtub and a nuclear airstrike happening outside. So that's how you should feel at the end of this podcast. But always remember in that moment of terror.
The next episode will be more light. I promise you that much.
That's true. But always remember also in that moment of terror that Diane Ladd is too young to play Chevy Chase's mom.
It's the movie Trap Promise.
It's a fact. See you later, folks.
There's nothing to fear except God. Whatever that means to you.
For me, God is a disease.